Good morning, good day, and good evening to everyone online. I have the pleasure of introducing Jim Tooney. So first of all, I'm Daisy Hessenberger. I work at the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, who actually we have a lot of connections with Jim. He used to work with us and know some people that I know in Switzerland. And I myself am a science communicator, so I'm really excited for this session all about Jim's visual media. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Daisy. All right, it's wonderful to address the standing room only crowd here. I'd like to accomplish three things today in this session. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I do. I'm a cartoonist and I'm a videographer. And I'd also like to tell you a little bit about my industry, the media industry. And the reason I'm sharing that with you, I'm kind of an outsider here. Most of us are scientists, maybe policymakers, data scientists or natural scientists and so forth. So I'm a media person. I'm definitely an outsider. I don't really understand your business all that much, and you probably don't understand my business all that much. So I figured it might be beneficial for you to understand my business a little bit more, because we are all becoming media people, and all the organizations we work for are becoming media organizations. So the more you understand media, hopefully the last section of my talk, I'm just going to talk about how you might be able to use some of the things I've learned in the course of your work, since we are all trying to become more outgoing, outreaching to the rest of the world, whether it's through our organization or through our personal work. Maybe you can take some of the lessons I've learned. I've been in cartooning for about 25 years. I've more recently, in the last 10 years, gotten into filmmaking. Just yesterday we premiered a film I did for Stephen here with Grid Arundel it was on fish carbon, and I'm going to show another one today. So let me show you a little bit about my work. I don't know if you can read that. I can sort of read it. So I draw a comic strip. It's syndicated in about 200 newspapers. It's definitely old media. It's newspapers. How many of you actually subscribe to a newspaper these days? One, sort of, almost. The hand almost came up. Okay, almost 1.5 then. Okay. So what I do is my character is a shark. For some reason, I picked a lot of cartoons where the shark eats people. I don't know why, but anyway, so Sherman's a shark. There's a sea turtle. There's a hermit crab. There's lots of other marine animals. And the comic strip for me is a great vehicle for not only just expressing myself, but also expressing some of the things I want to tell the world. And in the last few years, I've really embraced marine conservation. And this isn't a particularly good example, but I've tried to weave some marine conservation messages into my comic strip. I have about 200 and 250 newspapers. They're all over the world. They're mostly in North America, but there's some in Asia. There's some in Europe. It's printed in about 6 or 7 languages. About 35 of the papers are international. The others are in North America. Washington Post, San Francisco Chronicle, Chicago Tribune, et cetera, et cetera. So I've got a pretty big audience, and it's a very generalized audience. So the way I approach my science or my conservation message is with sort of what I call a Trojan horse. In other words, I have to package the message in somewhat of a disguise so that you think you're being entertained. Hopefully you're being entertained. You go to the strip every day because you want to be entertained, but again, sometimes there's a message in it, not all the time. Here's one about a program called Seafood Watch, and basically it's the cartoon. At the end of the cartoon, you are hopefully more aware of the fact that your menu choices have an impact on sustainability of the ocean. So that's just what I call kind of a bitter pill with a candy coating around it. In other words, you've learned a little bit of something, hopefully, and in the process, you've enjoyed yourself. Here's another one about, I do a lot of shark eats human gags, but on the other hand, oftentimes I'll try to embrace the message that sharks really are not that bad. In other words, in fact, as you all know, they're a key part of the ocean ecosystem, and they are not the threat that we think they are. So what I try to do with this one is, this entire comic strip is really all about getting that line in. The rest is just sort of entertainment. But if you've read that line, then hopefully you've taken some kind of lesson away from this comic strip, which is that the chances of getting eaten by a shark or even attacked by a shark are less than getting struck by lightning. Sometimes I take on esoteric or maybe more, I guess, technical topics, arcane topics like carbon offsets. Since I only have 30 or 40 words to explain the concept, it's sometimes difficult to get into these concepts. But over the course of a series of comic strips, over the course of a couple of weeks series, I can hopefully explain the concept a little bit more. And I'll just show one more. Here I address the issue of invasive species. Again, I've sort of buried this issue inside of a more entertaining cartoon. So the message really with my print syndication is that oftentimes you can get away with a lot in terms of telling the public about issues, not particularly complex issues, but you can get away with a lot, and you can really cultivate a very big audience if you package it correctly. And again, I try to sort of put this bitter pill with a sugar coating around it. And over the course of years, I've developed an audience of millions through the 250 newspapers that I have, and I've managed to maintain that. The other part of my work is videography, and well, about 10 years ago, I started getting into basically short filmmaking. And some of my clients through the years have been the United Nations, World Resources Institute, Pew Charitable Trust, NOAA. So I really specialize in creating videos for mostly nonprofits, some government organizations, but my focus is really on ocean conservation, since I've tried to choose a topic that complements the comic strip. So, and since my brand is already sort of known as the fish guy, the fish cartoonist, what I've done here is try to mix a little bit of live hosting wherever we are on a certain site. We have shot these all over the world. We shot Steven's video in Formentera, Spain. This particular one is in the Caribbean. And we try to take on various aspects of ocean conservation that this particular one is with the United Nations. Let me take a moment to show this video. This is about 2 minutes. It's part of a 9-video series called 2 Minutes with Jim Toomey on oceans. So this one's on marine litter. You ever wonder where trash ends up? We put it in a trash can, but where does it go after that? A landfill, a recycling center maybe? But not all trash makes it into a trash can. A lot of it ends up in the ocean. Some of it's dumped directly in the ocean by ships, sometimes illegally. But most of it actually starts its journey on land, sometimes far inland, from sewer to stream to river, and eventually to an ocean. And once it hits an ocean, it keeps going. If it hits the Pacific Ocean, it might end up in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, a colossal whirlpool of sorts where trash from all over congregates. Or it could end up on some remote island. Try to find a beach where nobody's been before, and chances are trash has beaten you there. By far, the biggest category of trash is plastic. Plastic is lightweight and indestructible, two qualities that make it the perfect container. But once it's used, plastic becomes a lightweight, indestructible problem. Cigarette filters are also a common source of marine litter. You may not think they amount to much, but cigarette filters are one of the most common items found in beach cleanups. Marine litter also kills animals. Seabirds are programmed to eat small things that are bright and colorful and feed them to their chicks. Sea turtles can't tell the difference between their favorite snack, jellyfish, and plastic bags. And fishing gear, such as nets and lines, continues to catch and kill long after it's been lost or thrown away. invasive or alien species have been known to catch a free ride on floating litter, and this can wreak havoc on native wildlife. There are ways we can help. Dispose of waste properly, recycle more, and switch to reusable containers where possible, and participate in beach cleanups. Industry can do a better job designing products that use less material and don't just get used once. And the next time you're given the choice between paper or plastic, say neither. We can all help solve the trash problem by making less of it. So there's a few key elements of the video that are common of the 9 videos. When I sat down and discussed this with the folks at the UN, there were a few things that were absolutely necessary in this video to make it a success. One was that it had to be short. So the platform here was online. So if you think about putting together whatever your communication piece is, the medium obviously has a great effect on what form it takes. So if you're going to show a short film at a film fest, or maybe put a program on television, obviously you can work with a larger format. People sit down, their attention span is longer. You can stretch it out to an hour and a half if you want, if your film is compelling enough, or a half hour on television. So those are sort of the accepted standards. But online, it's different, and it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I have 2 teenagers at home. Their favorite hobby is watching vines. Does anybody know what a vine is? How long is a vine? It's 7 seconds. All right, so that is the new trend in video making, 7-second films, where they have a plot, a beginning, and a middle, and an end, I suppose. I don't know. But short is critical if you're going online. The structure of the film, if you'll notice, is that in the course of the film, you set up an argument, you present a few compelling facts. You don't try to tell the whole marine litter story. You don't have time for that. But you choose your facts carefully, and you try to present them graphically. Now, we're at a conference about data, and you saw that one sort of bit of data that I showed you all. It was the type of litter that's picked up at the beach, and you saw how I chose kind of a visual way to portray that that's hopefully memorable to you. So we pick a few key facts in the video, and we try to present those carefully and not rushed. So instead of trying to get 10 things in the video and rushing through it, it's much better to choose 1 or 2 and develop it and make it memorable. At the very end, all 9 of these videos, if you'll note, if you'll watch them online, they have a call to action. So I devote the last 30 seconds to, now you've learned this, what can you do? What can you do personally? What can you do with your community? What can you do as a decision maker? So most of these videos have a call to action, and that's critical. So that when I worked with the UN, that was a critical part of their final bit of this video, was got to have a call to action. So those are sort of the takeaways of video making. Now, this was all done with a crew and with microphones and multiple cameras and this and that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can do something a little bit more guerrilla style using the same concepts. This is my old business. So again, I want you to understand media. I want you to understand old media only because I think it'll help you understand the impact of where we are now, the impact of the internet, the impact of social media, the impact of handheld platforms. So old media, the way it's been going since really the beginning of the 20th century, in my business, the newspaper business, the comic strip business, was just all about getting an idea, putting it on somewhere. In the old days, it was a typewriter and a piece of paper, and then it's a computer. And then the curation part. So it goes to an editor, it goes to an office in a newspaper or a magazine. Or in the television business, it goes to the producer, or it goes to the media company. This is a critical stage actually in old media, right? Because everything passes through this little bottleneck, and the editors approve it or disapprove it, right? And everything you read in a newspaper has been chopped down from larger amounts of content. And that doesn't happen on the internet, right? There's no curation, there's no editing. It just goes straight out there. And that's a critical concept to understand about old media and how that does not exist anymore in new media. And then just the production, rolls of paper, ink, the printing press, it gets in a truck. So you put a bunch of paper in a truck and you deliver it to a doorstep or a kiosk. So all that overhead, all of that carbon footprint, all of that stuff is pretty much gone. It's just, it goes from here to here now. That's what I'm going to talk about next, is how all that's changed. And that's changed to my detriment, but it's actually changed to your benefit. So people like me are going out of business, right? Professional content creators are going out of business, or we're being forced to shift away from our old media to our new media. And guys like me with gray hair are having a hard time with this. Now, if you're younger, you can start a career in that. Well, I can start a career in it too, but the trick is that the business model of this has died as well. So the old business model was, in the newspapers, you buy want ads, you buy subscriptions, you buy advertising and so forth, and all that sort of funnels back up into this brick building that is the newspaper headquarters or the media company or whatever. So that whole business model is dead as well. So the business model is dead, the distribution model is dead. The only thing that's still alive is the thought in your head. And that's why I guess I wanted to touch on really the theme of my talk today, which is that you are the media now. I talked a little bit about this 3 years ago when I attended Eye on Earth, that I'm not the media anymore, you're the media. And this is the one idea I want to leave you with today, is that you have the technological means, and a lot of you may doubt that you have maybe the editorial means, but we all do, and you all do. And not only do you, it's important that you take advantage of that. Because there's no curation anymore, you can take advantage of that. You don't have to pass this, what you have, your work, what you have in your head, you don't have to pass this through an editor, because when this passes through an editor, they look for an angle, right? So if it's a science story, they need a human interest angle to it, right? It can't be just a science story about deep sea ecosystems. They won't print that. They won't show a television show on that. It's not interesting enough to the general public. So what they want is, they try to attach an angle to it. It might be, kindergartners studying the deep sea ecosystem or whatever. But now that you don't have to pass all of your thoughts, all of your content through this intermediary, you can publish what you want. So I'm going to talk about the ups and downs of that. So as I said, the media has changed, and everybody is getting into the media business. And this is the platform these days. I want to show you just one picture. This is my 13-year-old son. So this is his selfie. This is his Facebook picture, right? And he publishes every week, right? He's 13. And he wants to be a marine biologist, so he actually publishes things about that. Now, he doesn't have to worry about saying the wrong thing. He doesn't work for an organization that might get a little uptight about getting his facts wrong, et cetera, et cetera. So he doesn't really have an editorial standard to live by. But on the other hand, he does find the time. He's got a pretty busy day. He's a Boy Scout. He's plays soccer, this and that. But if he can do it, we can all do it. And as a matter of fact, right after I shot this photo, I stepped back and I saw everybody doing the same thing. So it's like everybody's in the business of visual media. Everybody's in the business of social media now. And it's important that we learn to master it and learn to use it to our advantage. So you hear a lot about storytelling. And I talk a lot about storytelling to scientists. And and I can hear the thoughts in their head, which is oftentimes it's like, I'm not a storyteller. I'm a scientist, right? I don't want to do this. I don't want to make up stories. I don't want to make up characters. I don't want to make up plots. I don't want to make up settings. I want to do my science. And I can talk about my science, but the storytelling stuff, I suppose I could get good at it, but this is just not what I'm interested in. And if you're telling me I have to make up a story to convey my science, then this is a non-starter for me. I don't have time for this. I want to talk about that a little bit because I think we pass over the storytelling part of it like it's easy. And if you've all tried to tell a story around the campfire, some of us are good at it, some of us aren't, right? Frankly, I'm not very good at it. When I tell a story, I have to sit down in my office and think over a blank piece of paper for about 8 hours before I come up with a 40-word cartoon. So I'm not very good at it either. But it's something that we can all learn. And the storytelling part, like I said before, the storytelling part can be a very good vehicle for conveying the kind of information you want to convey. So I'm not a storyteller, I'm a scientist, right? Well, some of the other things I hear is I don't have time. I work for an organization that should do this for me. What if it blows up? Let me talk about each one of those. So I'm not a storyteller. A story really, at its very basic concept is that it's a person, it's a single character, right? Single character doing something. I'm telling a story right now, right? You're listening to me. I'm a human. I am talking to you, and that's far more engaging, I hope, than reading my speech on a piece of paper, right? Which is probably the reason why when we tune into the evening news, we see a talking head reading the news to us. Why is that? Why do we need that? We can read it in the newspaper. There's something compelling about simply a person talking, telling a story. So I am simply telling a story right now. The story doesn't necessarily, forget what you learned in English class. A story, to be compelling, to have a human connection, doesn't necessarily need characters, plots, actions, turns of plots, and conclusions. A story can really just basically be you saying what you do. And, you know, it gets better if you can add, well, let's see, we were in the lab and we tried this and it blew up, or I spilled the pot of coffee and this and that. And you can kind of embellish it a little bit, but simply you talking about your science instead of the science talking about itself in the passive voice is a better way to convey your story than what you might read in the journal Science, where everything is just kind of dry. That's where we instinctually gravitate to as scientists. I don't have time. Well, my 13-year-old son has time. If you have time to write an email, you have time to tweet. You have time to post on Facebook once a week. So you do have time. You just need to develop that inclination to do it. And again, one lesson I hope you take away from today is that you shouldn't be too ambitious about what you tweet, what you put on Facebook, what you put on your blog. It's more important that you do this on a regular basis, that you keep people coming back to you. Daily is maybe a little bit too aggressive, but weekly certainly. Monthly is probably a little too intermittent. So it's important to keep it short. Sometimes you don't say much at all, but showing up on that regular basis keeps your audience building. I'm going to put all these points on one screen at the end, so you can just photograph it. You don't have to write all this down. I work for an organization that should do this for me, and that's true. Most organizations are becoming media organizations, and most are going through these growing pains and don't know how to do it, right? Most organizations are run by older folks who frankly don't get the social media thing, don't get the online media thing, are not media savvy because that's not what they do. They are scientists, they are policymakers, they are attorneys, they are engineers. But we've all, as organizations, we've all been forced to embrace media. So if you can't, if you feel like, if you work for an organization that has very strict policies about media, and that's not a bad thing, that's smart, then it's a conversation you need to have in the boardroom, in your meetings more often, because as an organization, you need to craft media policies, and you need to create more media under those policies. So that's important. What if it blows up? I've been drawing comic strips for 25 years. I've been blogging and doing social media for a good 5. If you're not Elon Musk, if you're not, if you don't do something incredibly stupid, you're not going to blow up. Okay, I wouldn't worry about blowing up. I think your biggest worry ought to be doing something that might conflict with the policy of your organization. So refer to the one above, which is you need to be aware of the social media policy of your organization. If you don't have one, you need to establish one so that you're all working from the same page. But as thoughtful people with worthy goals, I don't think you're going to do something very stupid. I've been doing cartooning for 25 years and I haven't blown up yet, and I've done some pretty stupid things. The media is not that ruthless. Okay, occasionally, like I said, the Elon Musk thing, you know, if you do incredibly stupid things in media, then you'll bring it on yourself. But by and large, that's a very remote possibility. So don't worry about blowing up. A lot of people, I hear that from a lot of people. Okay, so this is data, right? We're at a data forum talking about data, and this is the kind of PowerPoint slide we all hate to see, right? It is really boring. To a data scientist, it's probably poetry, but to the general public, it's not. So we've come up with visual things through the years that make this more palatable. There's the graph, right? All right, so we can see trends with this. That's a little bit more palatable to the general public, but again, puts most people to sleep. We've more lately come up with technologies that can make data even more visual and tactile and 3D and immersive and so forth. Things like this, where, wow, okay, now I'm really seeing this trend. I'm seeing it over 4 dimensions now. This is incredible. I can see it over time as well. And that's very illuminating, especially if you're a scientist. But to the public, again, it's not very compelling. I'm going to show you a still from one graph that we all saw, about 10 years ago, I think. It kind of changed the world, and this is what happened. It was Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, right? And what made that graph so compelling was he had to stand on a scissors lift to get to the top of this trend. We all looked at these carbon trends for years and years and years. We all saw this graph, and we never really looked at it closely. The general public didn't until he got on that scissors lift. And again, this is storytelling. All right, there aren't characters and plots and twists and settings and so forth. This is not the kind of storytelling you need to do. You just need to put a human element into it, and you'll have an audience. And your audience might not be millions, but you will develop a bigger audience that will follow you and and your work will resonate, with much greater impact. So again, I mentioned the newscaster example where putting a human face on information is really important. Okay, this is this little cartoon about storytelling. So this is an example of just Sherman. These are my 2 characters, Sherman and Megan. They're just a shark couple, and they go out and they eat people all the time. So anyway, so they're telling a story. So putting a face on what could be dull information, right? Whether it's news, weather, sports, whatever. The media does this all the time. And as a media person, again, I'm an outsider. I'm looking at this conference, in a completely different way. I'm looking at this conference as this incredible collection of content, what we call content in the media business. It doesn't seem to be packaged correctly for the public. And if we can package weather, we can package your data, your science, your facts. We can package that in a compelling way as well. And you can as well. And that's what I want to leave you with, is that you can as well. And in order to do this, and since there's so many thousands of different approaches to so many thousands of different issues, that to decentralize it and fragment it is a good approach in the beginning. In other words, as individual storytellers, for lack of a better word, for individual scientists, policymakers, whatever you may be, you can do this yourselves. But there's just so much content out there, so many compelling stories in the data, in the science that should be told, and it could be told with a much greater audience, with just a little bit of a change in the presentation. So I talked about social media a little bit. Got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The platform is one thing that we talk about in the media business that has changed a lot. So in other words, 10 years ago, if we wanted to do an outreach piece for a community in the developing world, for children in a community in the developing world, we would say, okay, comic book. How do we get it to them? We print it up and we give it to the community leaders and we distribute it. So now all these children in our heads have a paper comic book. And all that takes money, takes time. It doesn't necessarily work. That last mile is challenging. And so the platform part of it is something that we consider, how do we get beyond that last mile? And that's one thing I wanted to mention in my talk today, is that that platform is starting to sort itself out. And it's really this. And we might think this, okay, we paid a lot of money for this, right? This is an iPhone. This is 600-700 euros, right? But these things are coming way down in price. Not everybody has an iPhone. And they are prolific. They are prolific. They are everywhere. They are all over the world. And in fact, when I venture into less developed communities, I generally get a better cell phone reception than when I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. So a lot of the world has leapfrogged the developing world in terms of reception and reach. So this, in my opinion, is the platform to work for. You don't necessarily need to think in print or even the bigger screen, but the small screen is what we should strive for. So your graphic images, your films, whatever you're trying to convey, information you're trying to convey visually, really ought to be for the small screen. I'm gonna go through about 10 points of just as a conclusion, and I'm gonna put all these on the screen at the end, so you can just photograph it if you want, if you choose. So everybody wants to be viral. Don't plan to be viral. You can't plan viral. Viral is accidental. It is oftentimes not a desirable thing, right? If you look on YouTube, you'll see some of the just dumbest videos. A casual shot of the cat walking on a piano, 17 million views. All right, and you put your thoughtful video or your thoughtful image with your text on the net, and you get 17 views, right? Just accept that, okay? That is the way the internet works. Don't try to compete with the cat videos. Don't try to compete with all these sensational videos. Don't try to compete with the kids doing their gaming stuff. If you have 10,000 viewers, that's fantastic, because those 10,000 viewers are probably, I sound very elitist when I say this, but they're watching it because they want to watch it. and they are probably going to be more motivated to make changes in the world than the 17 million people who watch those cat videos. So it's okay to have a smaller audience, a more engaged audience, an audience that's looking for your next feature. This is a picture of my Facebook page, and there's an entry from a couple of weeks ago. So I wanted to talk about a few things. When you use social media or even short films and comics, I'm kind of the master of short, right? And it just through happenstance, my short has been very applicable to the internet. But short on the internet is critical. You are a small part of everyone's busy day, right? Nobody's going to sit down and watch your 10-minute thing. They're not, really, unless it really, really, really is really, really important. But if this is a weekly installment for you, 2 minutes is about the max. That's something when I worked with the United Nations, that's sort of the magic number that we work towards. As I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, 7 seconds is where we're going towards right now. But be short. You're a small part of everyone's busy day. Use the power of the retweet. In other words, every time you mention somebody else, you tap into their network. So if they have 1,000 friends, you've just opened a door to their 1,000 friends. And then if you do a couple of retweets, you will open doors to thousands of other friends. So the retweet is really important. That's something, if you're going to get into social media, a lot of folks, when they start, they'll post. That's fine. To master it, to get it out there even more, the retweet is really important. So think about if you're doing something that's related to somebody else's work, tag them. They're going to see it. They're going to send it to their friends. And that's how things become viral. If you don't try that retweet, chances are it's not going to even, you're not going to come close to making it viral much, or even going out to 10 or 20,000 folks. So the retweet's important. Put your content in context. So if you're going to talk about climate change, you don't have to tell the whole story, just a little piece of it. Because again, everybody's taking this in context. There's lots of other installments on Facebook, blogs, whatever, that talk about different aspects of an issue. So put your entry in context. Really just try to talk about one very specific aspect of your work and then leave it at that. Don't just devote all your space to information. Try to put a little entertainment value in it. All right. So if it's a visual, if it's an image, it doesn't necessarily have to be a graph or something that's really rich in information. It can just be kind of a fun accompaniment to a more serious caption. And if you go to a website like Wikimedia, if you need a picture of a lion cub, you can use those copyright free. So there's lots of copyright free images on the internet, and it's okay to use them. I'm going to rush through the rest of this here. New installments regularly. If you're going to do this, weekly is ideal. Monthly is good, but like your favorite TV show, like your favorite radio program or whatever, it's nice to know that it's going to be there next week. That's how you develop an audience regularly. Even if you're just showing up for work. You're on vacation, boom, boom, 2 sentences. It's, boy, that Hurricane Florence really, did a number on Florida or whatever. Just show up. Just try to make your installment. Make it personal. So again, talk in the personal voice. Talk in I's and me's instead of the passive voice. Speak your science as a person, like putting the face on the weather, like putting the face on the news. That's who you are. You are a scientist. It's not the science. Common branding elements. This is something I get into as more of a professional media person, but I try to use the same music in my videos. I try to use the same graphics, the same fonts, things like that. Now, you don't really have to take it that far, but if you want to take it a step further, then coming up with common branding elements is important. find that little jingle or whatever. Raw is good. I'm pitching television shows to Discovery now. They want iPhone video. They don't just want iPhone video. They want vertical video, right? Because that's really raw, shaky. So that's the shows they're optioning now. It's this stuff, shot vertically, shaky like that. So raw is actually good. The editorial standards for video have gone down and gone down, have changed. So now it's okay. This is your broadcast studio now. It's okay. Raw is good. Think about the news peg. So that's another way you can become viral, is if the thing that you're studying or the thing that you're working on now is relevant to something that's really hot in the news right now. And then you can tag that topic, hashtag it. You can have the potential to get sort of sucked into that wave of retweeting about a particular topic that's happening right now. A terrible hurricane, an earthquake, whatever, whatever it is that you study. So think about the news peg. And if you're interested in sort of having all those on one page, there they are. And so again, I'm going to leave you with this. You are the media. It's not as complicated as it seems. Just storytelling is simply putting a face on your topic. And then I left all my business cards on my desk, so there's my email. If you have any further questions or follow-up, feel free to email me, Jim at Sherman's Lagoon. Just as a side note, this is the state fish of Hawaii. It's called the Humuhumunukunukuapua'a, and he lives in the Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument. So his email address is rather long. So anyway, we have about 2 minutes for questions. Any questions? Yeah.
So I have 2 questions. That was great, Jim. Thank you so much. How do you know your messages are? Oh, thank you. That was great, Jim. How do you know your messages are working? When you have a call to action or that you're doing something, how do you know anybody is really taking that and running with it, or are you hoping it just adds to other messages that are out there? And the second one is, do you think by having the sharks keep eating people that it actually contributes to that?
Yeah, good point.
So those are my 2 questions.
Sure. There isn't a lot of feedback in traditional media, so my traditional videos, the only really clue you have that it's working at all is if you hear people talking about it, and not just physically talking about it, but talking about it online. But you don't really know. Your intuition is that you're contributing this small piece to the argument, and you're confident the overall argument is sound. And you don't. That's the other thing. I mean, you're kind of working blind. You don't really know that any of this is working. But over the long term, it does. It's like a career, you know. Those little footsteps are kind of imperceptible. Yeah, I contribute to the reputation of sharks. Guilty as charged. I hope that people don't confuse cartoons in real life. Like, you know, mice don't wear shorts and have big round ears. So cartoons in the real world are different. So I try to put. I'm actually gravitating away from shark eats human gags a lot more. These are older gags. So I think we have time for one more or 2 more. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. I was quite impressed with your presentation because it resonates well with what we are still stuck in the old media.
Right.
Where we face the challenges of the bottleneck, where everything has to go through the editor. And we are trying now to move from that to the new media, where we want to make everything visual online and the internet. And I was thinking maybe it's an area which we can link up together and see how we can, you can help us to improve this new media. We work with Grid Arundel.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes, in producing the atlases does
Yep.
the visual, and we have produced this amazing Limpopo together, and it's something we want to improve in all the productions we are doing. So I think we can also link up with you in trying to, yeah.
I look forward to that, yeah. Shoot me an email. I'll be happy to talk to you further about that.
So that's actually just perfect because mine follows on from that. I'm a policy maker online, or maybe I'm an academic in this room. I'm not sure. I'm walking out that door. What's the one thing I should do today? The first thing, do I sign up for a Twitter account? Should I email my organization and find the communications office, or just start on Facebook with my friends? What's that one step today that we can take?
I have a social account and a professional account. I keep those separate. As a professional, I would check with your organization about its media policy before you start speaking in their voice, or even not in their voice, because it is a member of that organization. You might experiment with just the social side of things now.
And you might have some resources that you can help with.
For sure. So if you haven't experimented with it all, try the simple stuff first. And then you can gravitate towards the more serious things. It can be a high maintenance thing if you get a very lively, interactive audience. So you don't have to answer comments. You don't have to do anything but let them sit or delete them if you want. So it doesn't have to be high maintenance, but it can be. I think I'm getting the hook here. So thank you very much for